name is Eva Sabet. I'm the owner of Swedish Crown Bakery in Anoka, Minnesota. And today we are going to present a wonderful Swedish dish that I absolutely love, a Kroppkakor. And today we are actually going to fill these with mushrooms. And here I have organic portobello mushrooms that we sauteed with some butter, some onions, a little bit of garlic. So we're going to start with ricing this. And this little gadget, if you're not familiar with this, it can actually be purchased either online or IKEA has them too. And I love it. It's really comes handy. So it's okay if your potatoes are warm, they will cool down. Or otherwise you can put them a little bit in the fridge as well to cool faster. And then you want to press this through. And you better have some good muscles to do it. And between every press here, I like to always make sure that I clean it off, because then it will be easier for the next batch of potatoes. And the next step here is going to be adding the flour and adding the egg and a little bit of salt. We already have some water boiling for our dumplings, and I added some salt in there as well. So now we're gonna add the 1.5 cups of flour to our 1 pound of potatoes. And the key to this dough is not to get it too hard. If it's too hard, your dumplings are gonna be really hard. Now we're gonna do the 1 egg. And you can start off with mixing this with a spoon, but after that, we're definitely doing it with our hands. Your hands are your feelers, and those are the best ones to work with. We're gonna add a little, it's a 1/2 teaspoon of salt in the recipe. That's just about right, a little bit more. And when you're mixing this, it's almost like, if you've ever done homemade pasta, it's like bringing in the edges into the middle and then incorporating all the flour. And this potato is wonderful. It's doing exactly its job. It's really sticky, it's really nice, so it's gonna hold the dumpling together really well. So here we have a really nice dough. It's stretchy, it's not falling apart. The only thing we want to do is make sure that that egg is really incorporated as well. Now we're gonna roll out our dough, our beautiful dough that we just mixed. And if it's a little bit sticky, just make sure you're putting enough flour on your table. And it did get a little sticky in the bottom, so we're gonna start with flouring our table. If your dough is very sticky, just make sure to add extra flour. That definitely helps the dough from not sticking. So you see here on top it's sticky, in the bottom it's not, so we're gonna add a little extra flour on top. And we're gonna show you 2 ways to make this. One way is rolling your dough to a log. And make sure not to roll it too tiny, because then you won't be able to make your little patties. You're gonna have a really sharp knife, and I'm gonna cut off a piece. And again, it's stickier in the inside, so we're gonna use a little bit of flour. This is actually a little too big. I'm gonna cut off a little piece here. So you don't want too thick of a dough either, because then you're just eating all the dough. And now we're gonna fill this. So the thickness, I would be able to tell you in centimeters. I'm not sure how much that would be in inches, but the thickness should be so it's not see-through. And this is our mushrooms with the onions and the garlic and salt and pepper. Be sure to put this in the middle. Now, try not to overstuff your dumplings, because if they open up, you're gonna lose everything in the water. And then I usually like to pinch it corner to corner to corner. And then at the end, make sure all of it is sealed. So here, we can see a little dark spot. That means that the dough is a little bit thinner there. So what I like to do then is making sure that it gets a little bit floured. Now, if you just leave them on a surface that doesn't have any flour, they will stick to your table. You can either put them on a plate or a very well floured surface. So this is our first dumpling, and this was made with the patty whey. Now we're going to show you guys how to make it rolling out. Okay, again, make sure that your surface is nice and floury. Just because we're rolling it out, the moisture is going to start seeping, so it's okay if you have a little bit more flour so it doesn't stick. I usually move it around just to see if it's soaking up a lot of the flour, and if it does, you just want to add a little bit more. You can flour your rolling pin a little bit as well, and then just start rolling. And it's good to turn your dough while you're rolling, again, just to make sure it doesn't stick. Also, while you're rolling your dumplings, make sure you have your water boiling with some salt in it so it's ready for your dumplings to go in. Nine pieces. I'm going to cut off a little bit on this one. It's really sticky. There we go. So now you don't have to patty them out. It's pretty easy. It's okay if it's uneven. If you're picky, you can always just chop it off, but I'm not picky, so we're gonna just keep going here. So these will be a little bit bigger than our first roll. Stuff it with some mushrooms. And again, the same technique is used. The corners are really good for pinching. So we pinch it, bring in the other side. Pinch. Make sure not to pull too hard though. If the pinch is too hard, you might rip the dough. Especially if it's with fruit, it will definitely make a hole in it. So we are ready to put our kroppkakor, the dumpling, in boiling water. And what I like to do is always check on them, make sure that there's no holes, and then also reshape them a little bit. Sometimes when they're sitting, they tend to sink a little bit. So a really good gadget to work with for any kind of dumpling. I think Asians use this one a lot. It's a skimmer. There's other kinds of skimmers as well. Some of them look like a sifter. Anything will work as long as the dough doesn't get ripped. So I'm gonna place my dumpling in the skimmer. And here is our boiling water. And depending on how many pieces you have and how big your pot is, I usually don't put more than 4 or 5 in there because then it gets too crowded. So while this one is trying to boil, we are going to start melting some butter. And you want a lot of melted butter on this dish. So there's 2 ways you can eat your dumpling. Seems like everything has 2 ways. Either you just take them out of the boiling water, put them on a plate, and then drizzle the brown butter, add the lingonberries, or we can actually brown the dumplings in a little bit of butter so they become golden brown. Switch. So I'm gonna put some butter in this one. And this butter you don't have to brown, just make sure it's melted. Let's check our dumplings. Yep, so now they come to the top fully, and now I can see the color is starting to change. That means they're almost there. Make sure you stir your butter a little bit too, the one that you're gonna brown. So when you're taking out your dumpling, make sure you actually shake up that excess water. If you don't, you're gonna have a big splash in here. There we go. Spin around. And now you want to have your butter on a low, medium heat. And make sure before you put in your other dumplings that that your water is boiling fully again. If I put in dumplings into water that is not boiling, I'm gonna cool it down again. So Turn these around. So let's look at our dumplings. They're getting really nice and brown. So we're going to take these out, put them on a plate.